All right, welcome everyone to the XojoTalk podcast. I'm Paul Lefebvre, the Xojo developer evangelist. And in this episode, I have a double feature. I have two guests. I have Bruno Frechette and Jonanthan Guillemette. And they are Xojo users. They were at the XDC conference back in Texas a few months ago. Their big claim to fame is two things. One, they're from Canada. And two, they swept the Xojo Wars contest this year. So two exciting things, got them both here on the podcast this time. So guys, why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and what you use Xojo for?
For sure. Thanks for inviting us. We'll try to be as intelligent as possible in this podcast. So yeah, we both work at the same company. It's called PJJ Productions. We are a company that make on-hold messages for phone systems. We also record voice prompts for large RVR systems like press 1, press 2, press 3 thing that you just hate us so much for. That's our voices. We don't do the systems, mind you, but we record the voices for that. We also do some retail services, in-store music, and in-store digital signage. So that's the things we do. We've been in business for 30 years now. Would you believe that? That's pretty awesome. And we use Xojo as our main development tool, both for internal needs and also the software that runs on the little computers that we install on site at our clients' stores and premises. So basically, the unit that we install is a Mac Mini, and it serves as an overkill audio player, which we mostly connect back to our server periodically to pull out the new messages, new music when there's music involved, and new images, and that's basically it. So the software we use Xojo for, the software on these Mac Minis, and then we also use Xojo for lots of little things and in-store help tools that we developed for internal use as well. And I'm one of the owners of the company, and I would say the lead developer. Although I'm like a lot of people self-taught in much of what I'm doing, I do have some formal education, but mainly struggled for a while to understand what object-oriented programming was. How I think I understand better. And Jonanthan here is Director of Technical Service and Support. So he's in charge of installing new clients, making sure all the little Mac Minis run well. He also helps me develop some of the tools we use internally. And it's my plan to have him code more and me drink more while he codes. Not just kidding.
I'm not a full-time programmer, but when I have time, I use Xojo to help me in my job to save time. And when I have more time, I can do more programmation. It's a really interesting thing for me.
So he actually didn't know anything about Xojo before he joined us last year, 1 year, 2 years ago?
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so I introduced him to Xojo, and it seems I'm not that bad of a teacher because he still uses it at home for other purposes than just work-related projects.
It's easy to use because you did a lot of documentation, and it's really appreciated.
Oh, sure. You bribe the podcast host. That's a good plan. I like that.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's pretty cool. So when you guys don't actually record the voices yourself. You have like voice talent or something, right?
Yes, we do. We actually have one, our main studio technician that does all the mixing and splicing and conversion and stuff. So yeah, we have one person. He's the main studio technician, and he's also the main French male voice for the productions, the audio productions we make. So he does record a lot of things, but we also have freelancers, voice talents. I would say approximately between 20 and 30 regular voice talents that we call upon in French and English, male and female. We also did some recordings in some foreign languages for customers, our clients that had offices for clients that had offices around the world. So we did some Chinese, some Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, German, Arab, Norwegian, Swedish. What else did we do? Some less spoken languages, like in north of Quebec. There's natives population there, and their language is Inuktitut. So we did some recordings in that. That was pretty challenging to actually find a narrator for that language, since there are maybe a few thousand people that speak that language altogether in the world. So that was pretty challenging, but we did.
So people actually needed some sort of online phone system that used that language? They had enough people that were...
Well, for that particular client was Bell Canada. So they had like an office for probably customer service related things. And the other client we had was a credit union, so a bank that had a branch there up north. So they wanted to have like some greeting messages in the native language.
Oh, well, that's nice.
That was pretty nice. The strangest one was the Arabic, because you have absolutely no notion of what the script is in relation to the audio you're hearing. So it's pretty tough to actually splice the audio segments at the right places. So we had to tell the narrator, okay, just make sure that before every segment you say in English so I can understand segment 1, and then you start talking, and then segment 2, so I know where to splice.
Right, yeah, because you got to put it in the software and stuff so that the app can find the right pieces and play it back. Is that the idea? Yeah,
well, the idea when what we deliver to the end user, the client, is split audio files. So each audio file has an ID, is named properly, converted in proper format, and then they place that in their IVR or greeting message system, and they program. So message 1 is the welcome message. If people press 2, and then goes to message 2, which is the main menu, and then if people in the main menu press 2 again and goes to the sub menu, whatever. So, but all that part is done by the client. But we have to make sure that we deliver all the audio files correctly separated or split, so that they can place all the bits and pieces at the right places, so that the flow of the call will actually do what it's supposed to do when people press the numbers on their phones and cuss, saying, what kind of system is that? I'm turning around and I can't seem to press 0 to speak to anybody. And then we meet people on the street and say, oh, you're the guy. So no, we just record the voices. We don't make the systems, or they're not well programmed. We have nothing to do with that. Don't throw stones at us.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So you said you use a Mac Mini that people install on site.
Yeah, for on-home messages and in-store music and digital signage. So these 3 applications require a media player. We selected the Mac Mini, and it runs Xojo software on it, and it does. I would call that a more or less glorified media player, but there's a lot of little bits and pieces that were added over time. We have currently over 1,000 Mac Minis installed in the field that play either 1 or 2 audio zones plus 1 video zone at times. And they all connect back to one little server, which is also a Mac Mini. And we also have older technology installed. The Mac Mini is the latest one, but we have other dedicated proprietary hardware that we'll also use for media players that we, I would say maybe a few hundred internet-loaded ones that connect back to our server. But we also have some older technologies, modem-loaded units, and I would say close to 1,000 of these as well, right? So about 1,000 of older modem-loaded media players that we dial into. So it's instead of the player connecting back to the server here, so we have a bunch of machines that actually dial out to these during the night to download the new messages in there. These are mainly for on-hold messages. So it's a few thousand units. But yeah, now we only install Mac Minis. Yeah.
Well, you were at the conference in the spring. You remember we announced the Raspberry Pi support coming in the future. Is that something you guys think you'll be taking? Oh, he's holding up. Bruno's holding up one right now. Yeah, I can. I don't know if I can hold up mine here for you to see. It's got a shorter cord. No, it's not reaching. Sorry, mine's black, not white like yours. But do you think
Model 1 by 1? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I just got a Model 2.
I have the new one.
Yes, you do. I got the same one. I got the same one that you got there, Jonathan. We'll talk about that in a bit. So, is that? Do you think you'll stick with using Mac Minis? Does that work pretty well, or you think there's any advantage to using something like a Pi, or any reason to use something like a Pi for your software?
I was actually very excited when the Pi support was announced. That is definitely the way we're going to go because of the pricing. Because of the possibility to purchase them at a quantity on new units, because we're currently installing used Mac Minis that we purchased, because it wouldn't make sense to have like $1,000 media player just to play music in the store. So we purchase older models, mainly off of eBay, but we also have some computer recyclers that we have connections with. We can purchase lots of Mac Minis that we strip down, replace the hard drives, put a solid-state drive in there, and it has the advantage of being the same platform all of the time. You know, one of the reasons we didn't want to go with Windows is that I don't like Windows. The reason why we didn't want to go with Linux is it was hard to have always the same hardware platform. So in 5 years from now, we might have like 10 different type of hardware platform out there in the field. And since we have to support them all, and anything that breaks, we have to support, or either ship a new machine or software updates or whatever, it's hard when you have different machines to support. So that's the reason why we stuck with the Mac. And because we could purchase quite a large quantity of these used little minis at a very decent price, allowed us to have a nice and uniform platform to work with. Now with the Pi, since the Pi doesn't get upgraded that often, so that'll give us, I believe, pretty much the same stability with the hardware, and plus it's going to be a lot cheaper, and plus I can order them new as I need. So yes, I'm pretty excited with being able to compile for the Raspberry Pi.
All right, yeah. When I was thinking about types of people that would, really key into something like this, you guys did pop into my head. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, because the thing hardly uses any power, so it's more power efficient on that, and it's so darn tiny. It gives off no heat, doesn't have a fan or anything. Yep. You can plug in a bigger SD card into it to fit, what you need. That'd probably be the biggest thing if your audio files are humongous or something.
They're not that big. They're not that big. Actually, we compress them pretty. We've developed. We haven't developed. We found pretty much the nice sweet spot to have a smaller file that still has a great quality, and we can fit quite a bit of songs in these machines. We're currently installing our minis with 120 gigs solid-state drives. And it holds our current music library is maybe 14,000 songs, more or less, and we're not half the capacity right now of the hardware. So it's our compression is nice. The sound is great. We have some clients which are actually pubs that have very high quality sound systems, and it just sounds great. And it does, since it's not streamed, it doesn't take too much bandwidth.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Well, we're eager to see the types of things people are gonna do with this when it ships later this year. And I've had some fun playing with mine. I've only had mine a couple weeks now, so I'm still a bit of a newbie when it comes to this thing. But it's a fun little gadget. When it first came in, I hooked it up to my TV set. As it needs a display, and that was the closest one I had handy that it would plug into. So I just plugged it into the TV, and I had it sitting there in the living room. hang, with a HDMI cable running down to it. And then I dug up an old USB keyboard and mouse that I had in the basement, plugged them in, and had it sitting down there. And then later my son was sitting down there on the floor playing one of the built-in games that came with Minecraft. And it just reminded me of when I was a kid in the 80s with my old Atari computer hooked up to the television set in the living room. It looked just like that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but we played around a little bit. My son and I made a little text adventure game with it as a test to play around and see how it goes. So yeah, we used our house as the location. So we made a map that let you move from room to room and look for one of our cats.
Oh, that's cool.
A little adventure game. Yeah, so that was pretty fun.
Yeah. Another thing that we use Xojo for at the office is a few of our servers are actually Xojo based, not the main one for the Mac Minis, but there's another application that we have where we installed some commercial screens for signage, and these screens had a built-in player capability, so we didn't install any external media player with these screens, but we just reverse engineered whatever protocol they had for connecting back to their server, the server that the hardware vendor provided with the screens, and we just made our own server so it could run on Macs as well. So we used Xojo for that as a web server, and one of the neat things that I really like about the Xojo web server, and the way we use it is we make a web application, but we use the pages that the web applications make, the built-in web pages, as an admin page, and we use the handle URL event,
right,
to actually build a completely separate server. And I think this is really, really a neat application of what the web application can do. So we can, if we log into our server at the web address, it just detects whether the IP comes from internal or external, so allows or disallows the built-in page to be displayed. And then we can monitor whatever is going on in the server with that web page, where at the same time, it's actually getting connections from regular HTTP connection that we decode and build the pages back to send back for that application with the screen. So we build whatever the screen expects the server to send back as HTML documents. And so I think that's a very neat way to use the web application as a web service. It's really an awesome way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've done a couple webinars recently that kind of are hyping up the idea that, you can use Xojo to provide web services in a pretty easy way like that. You just,
yes.
If you're already familiar with writing Xojo, or even if you're not, it's just an easy way to just make web services. You just got one event handler that you just, process what came in, call off the methods you need, return some results back. It's very fast and easy, and it's surprisingly simple, and it kind of, I think, helps people get their head around this whole web services concept that maybe they've been a little intimidated by or something. So
exactly, and we've had I've built a few other little things that use the same principle, where we need like a processing engine that would pull information from a remote server at regular intervals. So I've made, instead of making like a desktop application that has a window that I can look at, I just made a web app, throw it on a server, and the web app runs. And if I want to see what's happening with that particular service, I log in with the built-in page, and it gives me information on what the application is doing. So for my part, we're going to be moving more and more towards that direction for a lot of internal services and little things that we do. For example, audio converters. We have a news server where I actually pull some audio files from a news agency to play back at our clients through our clients' audio. So we have a little web server. Well, it's not a web service actually, but it's an engine that pulls information from an FTP site on the news agency, and then pulls the audio file back, and then just throws it at whatever customer we have that are subscribed to that news feed, if you will. Mm-hmm. So it's all an engine with using the Xojo web page as a monitoring tool for the engine.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a very good use of the tools there in that particular case. So your customers are kind of, based on these languages you said you're doing, they're all over the place, all over the world, pretty much? Or?
Mostly in Canada, I would say. Even closer, mostly in Quebec, in our province.
Okay.
I would say maybe 70 to 80% are in Quebec. Another maybe 15% in the rest of Canada, maybe 5%. I'm being generous, maybe 2% abroad. And most of the clients that we have abroad, it's not for on-home messages, it's not for in-store music, it's really for voice prompts that they call upon our services. And it's usually companies that will have their head office in Canada, but they have offices all over the world, so they call upon our services to make their greeting messages. So we just record the voice prompts, we find the voice talents, we record that, we ensure quality, ensure it's converted into the right formats. You can qualify us more or less like a voice broker, if you will, that finds the right voices, the translators, and then does the audio processing and then delivers the audio files. So, but mainly our clients, the ones that have media players installed, they're in Canada.
And for our listeners, they probably at this point know that I'm in the Northeast U.S. I'm not too far from where Bruno's company is located. You guys must be like just outside of Montreal.
Yeah, halfway between Montreal and Quebec City, so maybe 2 hours from the border.
All right, yeah, so that'd probably be, I don't know, like maybe 6 hours from here for driving.
Yeah.
So both of you, as I mentioned a couple times now, we're at the XTC conference in Texas. And one of the things we do at the conference each year is we have various types of coding contests. And this year we had a game, and it was called Xojo Wars. And it was a spaceship battle game, and contestants had to program the spaceship to fight against other ships, 4 at a time on the screen. And at XTC, that battle was hot and heavy, and in the end, Bruno was the champion, and he won there.
Yay!
And which was very exciting. And then people seemed to like our little contest so much that when we got back from the conference, we were talking about here and said, well, let's do it again, but opening it up to the larger community and also throw in the losers from XTC to participate as well. And so everyone got to throw their hat in the ring, and Bruno's coworker here, Jonanthan, ended up winning the community battle. So both the champions of Xojo Wars for 2015 came from this one little company. They, sit right next to you. And, cries of scandal went up in the community. No, I'm just kidding.
I hope not.
No. It was just a happy coincidence. But so, the world wants to know, what's your secrets?
Oh boy. Want to go first, Jonanthan?
A special thing I need to tell to you is Bruno at the beginning of the XDC told to me, I'm not sure. I think I will not be ready for the contest. And he won the contest.
Actually, I wanted to make sure that my ship would not fall on the shame of not being able to win against Follower. So
yes, Follower was my demo ship. That was like the shame barrier you had to break. And my first initial tests, I couldn't win consistently against Follower, so I said to Jonathan, forget it. I'm not going to enter the contest if I can't even beat Follower.
And my wish was, I really want to beat Bruno. I really want to beat Bruno because it will be a great... if I can say, hey, I beat Bruno, it's a big challenge for me. It was in my dream.
Wow. Make me sound like I'm the biggest programmer or the biggest brain in the world. Wow.
But
no.
We are only 2 programmers where we are working, and it's why my wish was to beat Bruno. And did you remember what I asked to you during the contest?
Oh, I do remember during the contest, because Jonathan had high hopes for your ship, Bruno, and he had suggested before, he said, just swap our ships, put my name on Bruno's, put Bruno's name on mine, and then I'll win, but I'll tell him after that it was him. But I wouldn't play along with such schemes.
Yeah, I knew your integrity wouldn't be... would hold up to that kind of bribery talk.
I was a little bit disappointed of me because the version I submit to the contest was not my best of one, because I changed during the contest. I changed my a way where I changed a lot of time idea, and at the end it was not my good one, but I erased my good one, and it's why it was this version, and this version was not too bad because I win during the web version of the contest, but there is a little bit of luck. If you check the three others, Jeremy was really nice, was really good, and I think it's a little part of luck.
Yeah, there definitely was an element of luck in the game, primarily, but just like with any sport, you've got the long, grueling season to get to the so-called playoffs, and then you get to the playoffs, and then there's a lot of luck involved, and the best team doesn't always win the playoffs, or the team that had the best record during the regular season doesn't always win the playoffs. And the same thing with Xojo Wars, because if you made it to the, quote, playoff battle, I mean, you only had one battle at that point, so if you had a really good game, you could, be an underdog and win. Are
you telling me I don't have the best chip? I just was lucky to win.
I say no such specifics, but and because only I know, because I run these tests all the time. I ran them repeatedly over and over to make sure there was no crashes and to watch the game progress and all that stuff. So I know the percentages of how often people won things.
Okay.
But everyone else doesn't know that.
Okay.
It's like, at the beginning of a baseball season, you get all the analysts that, do the projections for which team's expected to come in first. And, they run like, thousands or millions of simulated baseball seasons. And they'll say, okay, in this particular scenario, the Yankees are going to finish first. And then the season ends and the Yankees didn't finish first. You can't predict the future. It's just, but, I did have guesses as to who might win. And, but yeah, it didn't vary too much, really. I mean, I did have it run a lot of battles to lead up. So, I mean, it tended to average out in the end. As you watch the battle, some people would jump to an early lead, but then they'd, maybe settle down. The strong contenders would always bubble up to the top. And it was often the same or close to the same group that made the final battle. So it's good to see some amount of consistency. But there's always a little element of luck, which is fun because you don't want to have... people feel too intimidated completely that they have no chance to win. So, but I don't know what we're going to do next year. It was a lot of work to make this particular game, and I might try to do something completely different next year. So we'll see. I'm open to suggestions, listeners. If you have ideas, shoot them my way. I still got some time to plan. Hopefully I'll start a little earlier this time.
You know how it is. We always start at the last minute.
Yeah, it's the bane of the programmer. Is I got time. Uh-oh.
I get no more time.
Okay, that was due yesterday. I need to get this finished. Yeah, that's always the case. So I'm looking here. We're doing a video conference, as I do with all these podcasts. And I'm looking at what is a very cool-looking office for the part I see. Is behind Bruno and Jonanthan is this wall mural, if you will, of some type of circuit board.
Yeah, it looks like a card, a computer card. If you look at the connector at the other end, like an old type of connector card.
Yeah, it's like it's a gigantic circuit board of maybe a computer socket or card or something that plugged in. It's got to be old school because the number of things on this thing is crazy. I mean, it's certainly, I mean, if this were a mural of like the inside of an iPhone, it would be, an inch by an inch wide or something. This thing is like 20 feet by 12 feet or something. But it's quite a dynamic background. It's busy, yet it draws your eye in. It's fascinating. I should get a background like that for maybe doing video webinars or something.
Well, our office is pretty wildly decorated. Like you saw also my video wall here, which serves also as a digital signage testing video wall. On the other side, I got a brick wall. So, and this is actually...
They're real bricks. They're not digital or anything.
Bricks. No, because we did a renovation to the building. We are in a building which is over 100 years old. And when we did some renovation, we kept some of the old sand bricks And that's what we use to rebuild some internal decorative walls there with bricks. So they're genuine sand bricks dating 100 years old or more. So, yeah. And it's all decorated pretty wildly all over the place. So we got a lot of strange-looking stuff all over the 3 floors. We got a pool table. We got a rock climbing wall. We got there's a space in the basement we call the playroom for musical instruments to play music. We got an old vintage pinball machine. We got a little terrace for the little Friday afternoon beer, which wouldn't serve you any good, but we got a totem in the entrance. We got a lot of strange looking things all over the place.
That's awesome. Yeah, that keeps it fun and lively. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I used to work in an office, it was in downtown Portland here, and most of the buildings here are also, 100 years old or so. Maybe not all the taller ones, but we weren't in one of the newer high rises, if you can call them that, here in Maine. But it was an older building. It had a lot of brick and exposed wood beams and stuff like that. It's fun to work in an environment like that. We were on the top floor, so we had skylights everywhere, which was neat at times. But then when the sun shifts around, so you're working away, and all of a sudden, all right, it's 2:48 in the summer, and the sun, boom, right either in your face or shining against your display, and you're like, all right, time to move or something, because that would become a problem. But still, you enjoyed the light and the views and whatnot. We could see.
I got no window in my office. So just the main doors. Let me just turn around, and we can see the main doors. Hang on.
Yeah. Well, you don't have a window, but you get that giant video wall, so you could put up displays as windows.
There's a big window at the other end where I can see.
Yeah. Very nice. It's a welcoming place. I should have driven up there to do the podcast.
Oh, that'd be nice. You know what? 3 weeks ago? Mm-hmm. 3 weeks ago, Fred Roller and Paul Messier, they came up here in Quebec. So we had a weekend. Well, the weekend. Almost a week together. Hang on.
You did a big trip with them.
Yeah, so we had like a little nice informal get-together where we traveled a lot to Montreal and Quebec City, drank a lot of beer, and had lots of fun.
I think I remember maybe something posted on the forum about that, but you had it spun as a concept of a user group or something like that.
Yeah, well, we invented ourselves a Xojo user group in Victoriaville. And there are 4 members now. So 2 of them are here, and it was pretty fun.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's always fun. When Fred seems to have been on a tour lately. He also was at the conference. I think he's speaking at the Atlanta user group. Maybe. Yeah,
he invited me, and we tried to get together. But hey, they're both he and Paul are singles and no children, and whereas I have a family and wife and children and other obligations, so I cannot run everywhere in the world for beer anytime I want. Not quite.
Yeah, that is always tricky. I have to give my wife lots and lots of notice just for the Xojo conferences so she can plan it for me. Wouldn't do much good if I could just, all right, I'm going to be gone for several days and in a couple hours.
What?
Yeah, that probably would not go over well. All right, guys. Well, I want to thank you for doing this podcast here, XojoTalk podcast this time. And so, again, this was Bruno Frechette and Jonanthan Guillemette of PJJ Productions. And thanks again, guys.
No problem. And the only thing we haven't answered is, what's your secret for winning Xojo Wars? I've worked around that question, so I keep my secrets to myself.
I knew that would be something that you wouldn't share. You got to keep secrets like that, right? Stay tuned after the podcast for bonus material. Bruno is going to talk about an audio app he's been working on.
Let me show you. I was talking to you about my little audio editor software.
Yes, this is an app Bruno is working on to edit some audio, which I earlier, before we started, said, hey, that might be helpful for me editing these podcasts.
Yeah, so I've named it Cuts, and let me run it. It's still in dev mode, but...
he's running it in Xojo right now, so...
Yeah. You don't see the other little window. Hang on. I'm just going to cancel, create a new session. So let's put it on the desktop. New session. That's good. Save. All right. I'm just dragging stuff from one screen to the other.
Yeah,
there you go.
I see.
So that's the interface that I have right now. And you got two audio tracks. You got your little player here. I'm going to import some audio files in it. Can accept pretty much any type of audio format. So be it MP3, WAV, AIFF, compressed to WAV EULA, or whatever it is.
Right.
You can just drag. So let's just take an MP3 here of a U2 song, so I can drag it here. Oh, you don't see the little import window. Let me share. Maybe I can share the other screen. Hang on. It's going to be easier. Sorry about that.
That's right. The podcast listeners won't see anything unless we describe it anyway, so they won't know.
Okay, so that's going to be better. So you still see it here. Let's just do it again. So you can see the little import window. So I can take that here, and there you go.
Yeah, that's fast. Okay. You get the video thing. You drag the audio around. Yeah, that looks similar to how GarageBand does.
This works if I click. So I can resize it. It doesn't it doesn't compress the audio, just cuts the end of the audio. I don't have the waveform yet, but I'm getting there. So it just cuts there. And it's non-destructive, so if I stretch it again, of course, standard audio things, I can move it around. I can duplicate it if I hold the Alt key. It'll just create a duplicate of that particular region. I can also select some part and backspace to cut some part.
Very nice. And this is just a canvas that you have here?
It's just a canvas. I'll show you the image right after. I can split it in two, and I have two regions pointing on the same media file, so that I can restretch it. I can make some custom fades if that are tied to the region. So if I hold Control, I can just make a
You can fade the volume down. Yeah, that's handy.
If I stretch, so it's just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me import a few voice cuts here. So I'll just select all these. I'll import them here. So there you go. You have your voice cuts here. Again, so I just play. You were expecting a tax. I can put some volume adjustments on the track, so as to volumes like that. So that's, again, pretty standard. What's nice is one of the things we do all the time for on-hold messages is we have a music bed, and then we have some audio cuts, and then we need to spread the audio cuts neatly over the music bed. And then we need to create some fade outs, fade ins, so the music actually fades when there's narration on top of it.
Right.
Okay? So that's one of the things we do. Normally what we do is we just spread them out like by hand like that and say, okay, I can spread that out like that, pretty much like that. You know, I'm getting that. And then we have to, work our volumes like that, automation like that, and then back up, and then,
you lower the volume when someone's going to speak.
Yeah, exactly right. So what I've done is I've created some automation tools. So this one here is called Auto Spread. So it'll just spread all the voice cuts according to whatever music is on the track just below. So if I hit that, so they're all spread nice and neatly. If I take that cut and I put it before this one, it just replaces itself.
Keeps everything spaced out properly.
Yeah. If I just resize the music, it'll just keep the cuts spread properly. Let me just zoom in a bit so we can see the cut numbers. So it just gets them as spread all the time. I can link two cuts together. If I hold Command key, it'll just link the two cuts together, and then they are linked. So if I select them and put them in before it there, it just keeps neatly organized. And then on the track below, here, I can just do the auto volume. And that, if you see, it just puts all the volume the right places where it actually fades the volume of the music. And again, that's completely independent. So if I take that here, if I move it around, you see the volume and below just follows.
Right, it's tracking your voice so that it keeps
the other one is an auto spread on the top one. It'll just put it back where it needs to go, and it just puts the fades where they need to go. If I restretch the music track, the music file, it just keeps all the volumes and all the everything neatly placed. Then I can play with the volume levels. For example, here, this will be redone. It's not very intuitive, but this is the low volume level. This is the high volume level. And then this is the fade where the fade starts or ends, and then the fade length. So that just plays with the different fades. And there you go. You have your productions ready to mix. So I can just session mix the disc, select whichever format I want to have it mixed in. So AIFF, WAV, MP3, or whatever.
Right.
And then, or multiple choices if I want. And then select where I want to. Let me just make some space. Because I've done several tests, as you can see from the other folders. So I just put that on the desktop. Hang on. Oh, yeah, I need to name it. For example, my mix. So it'll just mix with all the volumes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just export. It's moving pretty quick. Yep.
And there you get an error during the conversion. Still is in beta, but where did it put it? My mix is here, so I have it here.
Une réinitialisation de mot de passe.
Right, and the voice is mixed right in there. Nice.
It probably was an error because I should have named them differently or whatever. Anyways, so this is what I'm doing currently, and it's so far very good.
And this essentially is going to be an internal tool that you're going to be using.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this was developed because one of our clients wanted to have us pre-record a series of different voice segments, and then all of their branches, they wanted to be able to select. For example, in January, I want to have the segment 47, 46, 45. In February, I want to have 26, 45, and 13. And in March, and every branch wanted to be able to select that. So what I did is also a productions window where I can say, okay, this is going to be the January production.
Right, and you can specify the order.
And then this guy here, which is in Victoriaville, he wants to have segment 47, segment 46, segment 40. And then the guy in Montreal, he wants to have segment 14 and segment 44 and segment 13. And then the guy in Quebec City wants to have 45, 44, and 40. So if I click here to have it shown live, and you see it just by clicking, it'll just build whatever production's been selected. And then I can select them all and say, okay, mix all these productions. They'll be named correctly. January, Victoriaville, January, Montreal,
right.
January, and mixed with whatever song I have as a background. So that's what I'm building right now. But yes, it's going to be an internal tool for making audio productions, on the whole audio productions, for the older generation of units. Because for the Mac Mini, I can actually throw some different voice segments, and the Mac Mini will just mix them on the fly, right? But the older audio units, which we still have quite a few hundreds, over 1,000 installed, they can only take like one audio file. It has to be pre-mixed. So
right. That's
why I'm using that tool.
Well, this is a kind of a perfect use case for why you would use something like Xojo, because it's not like you're going to find, an existing app that's going to do something this specific,
exactly.
But you can whip up your own.
Exactly. Sorry, I'm cutting and stepping all over you, like you said you didn't like. And yeah, there are quite a few tools that do that. You mentioned Logic earlier when we were chatting before the podcast. Logic is one good example. Pro Tools, Audacity, Medeos Pro. There's quite a few different tools that exist there that actually do some of these features, features more or less with more or less difficulty. Some are easy in some ways and then tough in some other ways. Some will have easy split of the audio cuts, but then it's tough to actually name each audio cut separately and mix them as separate audio files in different formats. Some will be very good at that, but it's tough to mix and put some volumes, automation there. It's a painstakingly long operation. So I'm actually making that exactly to fit the specific needs that we have for audio cutting and splicing and mixing.
Right, yeah, it'll exactly match your workflow.
Yeah. Let me show you the main window. So you were asking what it looks like. So it's basically two canvas. So one canvas is actually for the tracks controls. Let me just run it again so we can have a view of what it looks like when it's done. Open for the last session. This session here. All right. So if we can see on one side, library, get away. Okay. So you can see on one side, this is what it looks like, but this is the internal window. So there's just one canvas here that holds the track controls, the track names and little buttons to mute the track solo, like activate the volume automation stuff. And the other one is for the tracks themselves, which includes the ruler, the timer ruler, the track regions, and the automation and the select handles and everything. So that's all drawn by hand. Well, not by hand, by code. Sorry. So the main window just uses two canvas. That's it. And I would say that's my first real use of the canvas as a complete GUI draw interface. I used to have to make tools that I would have several container controls that I would duplicate and position all over the place. And it works, but it has its drawback. Really, when you get your head around using the canvas and drawing all your stuff manually, it's incredibly flexible. It's awesome. It really works a lot better than I had expected it to work.
Right. Oh, yeah. And it's fast. And I mean, and particularly for something like this, I mean, where you're pretty much everything is going to be a custom drawn thing because you're representing, they're not standard UI elements in any way.
Yeah.
It makes sense that it's a canvas.
And before, I would have actually drawn like rectangles with the rectangle class and keep track of all the rectangles, or maybe draw some other stuff or container controls that would contain rectangles and stuff. I would have done it like that, and it does work, but it's painful.
Yeah, that sounds to me like that would be a lot harder. That'd be a lot more tricky to manage, I would think.
Yeah, I was kind of afraid of going with a canvas and drawing everything myself. I actually felt like I would be going back to the old days where you didn't have any objects to actually throw on the screen, that you had to draw everything yourselves. But it turns out that it's a lot faster. It's a lot faster that way. Yes, you have to, get your head around all the maths of the scaling and keeping track of all the numbers and stuff, but it's really not that hard. I find myself surprised about how easy it is.
Well, some of this relates too to the game session I did at XTC. Someone had asked the question of, well, that's all well and good, but making games, but how does this help not making games, making apps that we actually use? And I said, well, I think the act of going through and making these games gave me a much better understanding of the types of things that Canvas could be used for.
Yeah,
and
it's pretty
this
cool.
is also another example. So, I mean, I can see how a lot of the stuff I showed when making games would apply to how you've used the Canvas to make these layouts here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that I actually experimented with that project. Canvas is one thing. Using a database as the file save document. So instead of trying to make up your own document format as a text document, which I used to do all the time, and then rereading that, I decided to simply use a SQLite document. So whenever I create a new document, it actually creates a new SQLite document. If I go to my DB
right,
here,
yeah, that's a good idea. I recommend that for people in certain
so it
situations.
just creates that, right? It just creates a table from scratch. So that's the first for me as well. And one last thing that I started implementing is the observer design pattern. So that's one thing that I've been assisting these sessions at the Xojo conferences this year and last year. And I've decided to start using the listener pattern so that I have all my data, and when the data changes, actually the tracks subscribe to the data, and then they receive an event whenever it changes, instead of having every method that changes the data, not forgetting to tell the main window to update as well, right?
Right.
It's the first time I actually start implementing. It's not perfect yet, but it works. And again, I'm surprised at how great of a job it does of doing that.
Well, that's why those things became patterns, just because they're so darn useful for lots of things. Yeah.
Yeah. I can show you if are we done yet with the hour?
No, if you got something else to show, that's fine. I wish I'll probably take a few snags of this to include as links for people to look at, maybe. But
well, maybe if there's another little podcast you want to make, I got one or two little neat classes that I made. One of them is actually to load and save data to and from the database, like some other object, what's it called? Object model, database model, like the one you did, Storm, and like the one that Bob did. Mine is a lot simpler, a lot cut down in its functionalities, but one of the things it does nicely is you don't have to subclass anything, and it'll, where can I show you that? Oh, okay, for example, my media class here. So that's a class, media class. Just hold some properties for the media file that I have, the file name, the sample, where it starts, where it ends, and stuff like that in the file, right? So I need, whenever I import media, I obviously create a new instance of that class to represent the media that I've just imported. And then I need to save that in the database, right? So with my class, instead of having the media class being a subclass of whatever object-oriented database class, I just need to see, okay, my tool is called Database Connector. So I just create a new database connector. I say, okay, save myself to the database. That's it. So it'll guess by the name of the class, so media class. I'll try to find a table that's called media. It'll just compare whatever properties we have that match the names in the database.
Right, match a column.
Whatever matches. So you can have a bunch of other properties that are used internally. They won't get saved to the database, and it won't throw an error or anything. But it'll still save whatever matches straight to the database. So there's very few restrictions. You don't have to subclass anything. You have to point the object once to the database where it's supposed to save stuff, and that's it. And it just, whatever new database is, not database, new table is accessed, it'll keep as a shared properties the name of the table, so it doesn't query, not the name of the table, sorry, the name of the fields, so it doesn't, or the columns we call it.
The columns.
It doesn't query the columns with every access to the database. It just queries them once, and then compares with introspection once, again with the whatever class is thrown at it. So it makes it very simple to have any class saved to a database. So that's one little tool that I built and used.
Well, that's pretty slick, Bruno. I like it.
And it's like a no-brainer, really. It's just like the only initialization you have to do is, I think you have to, in the open event, you have to link it to the database. Or the open, I'm not sure. It's the open event probably. Oh, there you go. Just have to open the file, so point it to the file, and then the module will actually No, it's a module method, is it? Open. There you go. All right, yeah. It's just so it just makes a new SQLite database, points it to the file, and that's it. And then whenever you need to call it, just save yourself. So save self, and that's it.
Yeah, and it saves all the information it has out that matches the table. Yeah, that's pretty fast and easy.
Yeah. I have the same tool for actually filling a window controls with a class. So if you have a class with stuff that you need to show, dates or strings or integers, and you just, again, I'm not sure if I'm using it here in this particular project, but it's the same principle. You just create a new instance of I call it the controls linker. Create a new instance, pass it a window, and then a class. And it'll just fill whichever controls have the same matching names as the class's properties. And you can do vice versa. And it'll just translate those also from strings to integers if the property is an integer or a date or a file name, actually. It'll just put the full path. And so it makes throwing stuff on a screen from a property or filling the property back from whatever user input was done on the screen a lot easier. So it doesn't cover all the bases, and it's not intended to, but it's intended to cover like 80% of the time of whatever you have to do. And then you can code by hand whichever, like populating a pop-up menu or stuff like that.
Yeah, any of the special cases, right.
Yeah, you can't really handle everything. If you try to handle everything, you end up with a very bloated class that is unusable because you have to remember so many little things and settings. It's unusable. So it's better have something a lot simpler that covers most of the things that you need to do, and then keep the things that you have to, the exceptions coded by hand.
Well, there's a famous quote for that from Alan Kay. It's keep the simple things easy and make the complex things possible. And
oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's a good quote. It's kind of a little Xojo philosophy there too. So there you go.
That's cool.